Namaste. How are you all today?
Very well.
Good, good. So last class there were many important points that were discussed. The main being, of course, choreography and learning of the margam and how you move forward, because just learning existing compositions is not enough. One has to also be able to move forward. And dance today, particularly Bharatanatyam, I would say, is truly international in its character. You go to any part of the world, you will definitely encounter one Bharatanatyam teacher or a Bharatanatyam class, and you will hear the Tattikari. So it's become, and hence the need for also structuring some of the things, some of the tools which you need to kind of move ahead with. So things like when you take a piece, when you take a padam, or when you take a composition, you need to do the word meaning, you need to do the line meaning, you need to do the sentence meaning, you need to do the context, who is saying it to whom, in what kind of a situation it is being said. You also need to understand the Nayika, her state, where she comes from, what is her level of understanding, what is her state in terms of her, if it's a Shringara piece, where it is positioned. Also, in Tamil, even saying Tamil doesn't help, it's Tamil. Doesn't come very easily. Now in Telugu, there are many places where cha and tsa are, they're used differently, and the meaning and context can change completely. So these are little things which need a lot of attention, and they cannot be kind of overlooked and glossed over.
So, Akka, all those who don't speak these languages, how should they approach them? And how important is it to actually do the pieces only in Tamil or Telugu or the traditional pieces?
The two different things now. One is for a non-Tamilian speaking or a non-South Indian when learning the dance. Obviously, the whole language is alien, so you need to give much more emphasis and time to understanding the words, the lines, the context, and the meaning, and the pronunciation as well, and the music also. And as far as doing compositions in other languages go, it's completely accepted today. Dancers travel to Gujarat, dancers travel to the north, dancers travel to the east, and you see every student, if you are a North Indian and you're used to Hindi, obviously your affiliation and your spontaneity comes when it's in your own language. So there is an extra familiarity that comes in, however much you attempt to learn the other language. So I think it's completely okay, because the content, if you see in the Bhakti period, it's been the same thing has been said in another language in the north or in the west or in the east. So I think that's almost accepted today, that you take pieces in any of the regional languages. But as long as you keep the whole ethos of the abhinaya in terms of gestures, in terms of mannerisms as well, you have to keep it Bharatanatyam. You can't change that.
And the music, Carnatic has to be Carnatic style. What if one wants to experiment with Hindustani?
Perfectly possible, because I think if you sing a Surdas Pad in Kamboji or in Shankara Varanam, it doesn't work, It needs that little crossover kind of a raga. But there are many ragas which are common to Carnatic music and to Hindustani music. So I think that bridge has beautifully been done. Ages back, MS Amma sang in Meera, and she'd done such a good job. Then she'd used things like Mand, which actually many musicians were not using it, maybe till she started using Mand for Mane Chakar Rakhoji at that time. So I feel that bridge, because even in Carnatic music, a lot of the North Indian ragas are coming in today. The approach might be very Carnatic, but the raga is pretty much same. So in terms of the Arohana and the Avrohana, the emphasis and the approach is different. So I feel it's possible to choose such ragas which really do not, in a sense, अटपटा नहीं लगता है, लेकिन अच्छा लगता है सुनने में. So I feel that intelligence the musician and the dancer must have to be able to compose music in such a way that it's. So I think that we have in a way dealt with it very beautifully. Any stray cases you see where it's a bit odd sounding, but otherwise normally I've seen that it's a good job done when people take compositions from other languages and try and work it out. Then as far as it's not just the language also. I think what is very important, and when I see today a lot of the young dancers trying to attempt other things, even as they attempt, you can tell how strong their base is. See, at what point you improvise and innovate is very important. If you don't have a reference point, if you've not done serious work in your basic understanding of technique and basic understanding of the margam, that shows if you improvise. Bad improvisation it becomes immature improvisation. So I think the reference point and the understanding of the tradition in one particular gharana, or call it any kind of tradition, is very, very important. One can't just, say one fine morning get up and half baked and say that today I'm going to create something. That kind of a thing obviously will not have a shelf life. No, I always say good work has shelf life. Not so good work doesn't have shelf life. So I guess that is, I think many of the gurus, why they didn't want their students to improvise, they didn't think it was the right time maybe. Nobody is against people doing newer things or wanting to move on, but maybe they wanted them to be stronger in their understanding of the tradition before they stepped out. So this is being the devil's advocate there. So I just feel that when you take that step, it has to be with a complete understanding. Your spine has to be steeped in the tradition. Whatever you do, it comes with conviction. Then maza hai, there is but if it's not, I've seen many people improvise without just one varna mold and you want to create something, then it becomes a bit of a tacky kind of an approach. It's, newness for the sake of newness. It's not coming from an evolved, sensitive you, and that I think is quite dangerous.
Akka, as a student, like if we want to expand our understandings and like people are going to different gurus to understand about different gharanas, so how much one should give, how much time one should give to one gharana to understand it, and after maybe learning from different gurus from different gharanas, like whatever we present, it becomes a mix of all the different
Styles.
And how should one, and when we see them perform, then we are not able to distinguish of which gharana it was, or is it a mix. How should we approach that, or how should we learn and imbibe from different gharanas?
This is a typical question asked by many students, because the confusion is there in the head. I think there is no end to learning. There is no end to exploring. But that doesn't mean you go to 20 gurus and confuse yourself even more. The thing is to learn from one guru and then do the introspection. Because today if you go to one guru, you get 5 styles. The coming together of 4 or 5 styles. If you take me for example, I started with the Tanjavur style, then I went on briefly to Aruvur, then I went on to Dandai the Panipille style, then I did Abhinaya from Kalanidhi Mami. So as it is, you have the work of 5-6 gurus which have been synthesized in my own way. So if you go to another guru who's again done 5-6 gurus, you will be in a sense still confused and still not find yourself in all this. So the ideal thing is to learn in one particular style, something. Now you people have almost kind of learned 4 or 5 varnams, I am sure, in different tala cycles. So you need to then introspect. So like a great teacher of music, I don't want to take the name, one student went and said that I've learned for 20 years, now I want to learn from you. So he said, you've learned for 20 years, so when are you going to think about music? So the thinking about what you are learning is very important. You can learn then from 20 gurus and still stay where you are, still not be able to find yourself or move ahead. So it's not about how many teachers you learn from or because there is a limit to the skills that you can put in. After that, the skills need to be digested and to be worked and to internalize and to think as to what other step can you really move in or what direction you can move in. There's no end to the skills that you need to acquire or you want to acquire. So we were talking about how the music actually is composed when you take a piece in a different language. You had a question, Amma?
I wanted to ask about what is the boundary within one creates? For example, innovates within.
One can't really define the boundary because that comes out of your understanding of the tradition as to how far you wish to go and how far you think it would be credible to go. So that's something that every artist needs to define for herself or for himself, and this is the key to moving ahead, because again it depends, it's very subjective. What is good for you might not be good for somebody else. How traditional do you want to keep your whole approach, and how much do you want to move forward? There is no one formula that fits all. And again, it stems out of training. If you had a very liberal kind of a training, I think you easily understand how far you can go. But if you had a very structured kind of a training where you've always been told to do it a certain way, not any other way, then it's becomes even more difficult to break from that mold and look at things from a different prism. But as I said, again coming back to pedagogy, if you're taking it as you are learning, then you always see the possibility throughout your learning as to it can also go this way, it can go this way, it can go this way. So it's not just a road that is drawn for you.
How can the format in the margam, we give so much emphasis to Varnam, and that's considered the yardstick to gauging the expertise of the dancer, and we're always focusing on Varnams. But in actuality, in practice, we are really getting very rare opportunities to actually perform a Varnam on stage.
Yes.
So then, do you think that the margam needs a rethinking, relooking? How important is it to still, I understand that Varnam is what makes you really involved in the Bharatanatyam dance technique and abhinay, all of that. But if there's no opportunity to actually perform it, especially for younger dancers who are, when we go to festivals, our slots are nothing more than 15 to 20 minutes, and we just look for items that are lots of energy and dazzling, and so there's no real opportunity for Varnams.
It's an interesting question, because one thing is to raise the bar of the audience. And how do you raise the bar of the audience? By educating them as you perform. So I think wherever you get an opportunity, you must do the margam, because it's a time tested, very solid thing that you create. And since this is also about NRITTA, we are also thinking of how approach to a varnam has to change also. It's not as though the format has to be kept in the same way as it, because as you know, jatis have become much longer today. Jatis have become winding, almost sometimes making no sense, yet they just go on and on and on just to show how much of stamina the dancer has. So the varnam is also undergoing a lot of change, as you can see, and an interesting part of what you asked is that people are coming with newer formats using Nritta and Abhinaya. Maybe not necessarily in the exact form of a Varnam, but centered around a certain theme or centered around a certain concept. You actually work Nritta patterns which would actually bring out the concept. You know, it sometimes is even a sentiment. It need not necessarily be something very tangible as a concept, but it's emotion through Nritta as well. So I feel those possibilities have also opened up today largely, which were not there before. So opportunities are also more today in terms of acceptability of other formats. Earlier maybe, you know, you had to do a Margam format to really prove yourself, but today I think you have the freedom of really breaking from the format and creating something interesting, something that uses the tools of a Varnam but need not necessarily be a total Varnam in that sense. And again, the content, many feel that the Varnam has a similar kind of content, most of the Varnams, whereas Bhakti Sringara, it doesn't really talk about very many other things. So if you want to explore with some other sentiment or some other emotive content, you again create something. Again, you need very good musicians. Musicians have to really understand your brief and be able to, and then you have to be able to give them, knit the pure dance, which is what we are trying here to equip you to be able to actually create Nritta patterns which can complement what you want to say, whether it is an emotion, whether it is a strong, tangible subject that you need to say, or it is just pure beauty through Nritta in terms of using wonderful arithmetic, wonderful patterns, not necessarily with bowl, it could be with sargam, it could be with a Tillana format. There are many other formats, even to a Tanam. You know, a Tanam is such a beautiful way of expressing in Carnatic music, and so I have used a lot of Tanams in work where I felt that, but you must understand for that the format of the Tanam. You know, Tanam has a meter and yet doesn't have a meter. So that kind of a free yet not free kind of a, so those are possibilities which need to be explored when you want to create something beyond the Margam, beyond the, and in fact in one piece you use many elements sometimes. You use swaras also, you use bowls also, you use tanams also, you use melody also with rhythm. So, you know, possibilities are immense when you start playing with all the tools available with you. But it's just that you need to have a thorough understanding first. For example, when you start with maybe a line which inspires you to create, you have to have a proper notebook. I almost finish one notebook for a particular production, you know, because jotting down all possibilities, visual possibilities, musical possibilities, because you need to kind of do your research very well before you actually attempt to even start work. So you need to be very clear of all the possibilities, lateral, horizontal, vertical, so that you know how much you can stretch yourself in a piece before you actually start the physical work on the piece or the music or anything like that. So that's the that's important part of approaching something that is new or something that is a little different from what you're already used to doing. That's where it helps in the Margam when you have done lot of Tala cycles, variations in Tala cycles, variations in approach, juxtaposing different things with different things. So, you know, that then the freedom comes of moving freely with the elements.
What is the methodology behind making a Nritta piece? What goes into making a maybe swara pattern using emotions? But what are the basic techniques that a practitioner needs to understand before making it?
See, it varies from what you're creating, you know, and for what you're creating. If it's a pure Bharatanatyam jati that you need to create, then there is a structure to it. The proper structure has to be followed. And depends how many avartanams you want the jati to be. You want a long jati, you want a short jati. Accordingly, the first line of the bowl has to have a certain length. If you want, again it depends if it's a Rattakala Chaukam or an Ottakala Chaukam, where it's a very slow pace, because again that depends on the varnam you choose or what the composition uses. Now this is a very slow, reposeful Kamasvarnam. So now you can't in this have obviously a jati which is a quickie. Tallang, kuttakka, dikuttakka, tatikkittatom. This is your pace. So you need to have ta, de, that you have to have a thing. That is where today when you improvise, sometimes one jati from one varnam is just put in another varnam. No? You take only the lyrics and you do the lyrics and just put, then it looks like the body of one person, the foot of another person. And you go and learn Abhinaya from somebody else, the Abhinaya is put there and that looks the Atma of some another person. So it becomes a khichdi of sorts. Can't be like that. It has to have an organic whole. So you have to understand what you're creating for. And swaras, for example, you have lots of swara possibilities, like sa sa ri re ga ga ma ma. These kind of repeating notes are there, or you can use jumping notes, or you can use patterns in sa re ga ma pa da. So those then give you takita takita takita. You must understand what you really need to create even in the swara. So sometimes what we do is we first do the mathematics and then put the swara on that. So then your NRITTA dictates. But sometimes what happens is the melody is what is more important. So you need a free kind of a swara and you just fix the NRITTA on that swara. So there are many ways of going about it, whether you're visualizing first and then creating the sound. Like for example, many of the Westerners when they create, initially when I was doing a comparison in the process, because for me the process is I like the process very much. End product is one thing, you see on stage, you clap and go back. But what has gone behind, how much you actually delete to arrive at that is very interesting many times. So I've seen that, many of the Westerners, they do the entire visualization choreography fully. And then the soundtrack just sits on it. For us it's unthinkable, because I, for example, can't move without the music. It's only now that slowly I've started thinking of the visual patterns and then slowly thinking of music. But earlier it was always music first.
And even traditionally that's how it's been.
The structure is already there and you create patterns for that structure. That's how it is. But today you have a concept sometimes, or you have actually, even to create for a stage like Ananya, for example, you have a specific site-specific work. So you need to visualize what will look good in that site-specific work and then work backwards as to what the music can support you. So the very many ways of today's demands of how you need to create are very different from maybe what it was earlier. Earlier doing, different kinds of jatis would mean you're very creative, or different kinds of tillanas would mean you're very. Today it is more of being able to do specific things for specific productions or specific work. So then all of you need to equip yourself to be able to also understand the concept and accordingly to create. You remember the site-specific thing. When we think of the Purana Killa behind and you are in front, or many times you have the majestic Khajuraho behind and you're creating. You just can't stand there and do a padam. Sometimes it doesn't work because it's a large stage and the scale, just imagine the entire temple behind you and you are in the front. the grandeur of it. So you also need to do maybe a little more grand pieces which talks about which resonates the same kind of grandeur of the temples or anywhere else. So I feel it depends on what you're creating for. So that needs to be kept in mind when you need to. But playing with rhythm has to be fun also. No? Many times we think, rhythm is something intimidating. It is so structured and codified that we cannot really play around with it. But I think as you in pedagogy, if you start playing with rhythm, not to be intimidated, it's like maths. For many students, maths is a hawa. It's very difficult. The teacher needs to be good to be able to initiate you and give you the tricks to be able to play around with rhythm. So we'll talk about this in the next episode.
Akka, in the NRITTA, if we see the adus being done, a lot of improvisation, even in terms of borrowing from other styles, is happening. You will see lots of chow movements, you see a lot of kuchipudi in Bharatanatyam sometimes some elements of Odissi. So, what are your thoughts on that kind of amalgamation of styles?
See, again, it's a very individualistic thing and how the body takes it, because if it's a natural progression where for a particular Lasya moment it smacks of Odissi. I didn't think of Odissi and do it, but it just smacks of some Odissi or a more tender thing, that's fine. But if you see a video and copy an Odissi dancer, the movement, what she's doing, I think that sometimes doesn't really work. But many times naturally your body moves in a certain way which you feel is reminding you Odissi. Well, that is something that happens sometimes, and I think that's a natural body thing. So that I think one cannot stop and say, no, this is now I'm crossing boundaries from Bharatanatyam to Odissi, I'm going to stop myself. No, I think you should let that be. But at the same time, consciously copying something for the sake of copying, or you just like it on that person, hence you want to do it on your body, might not work. So we continue this dialogue in the next session, next class.